Welcome to the Sleep to Dream Analytics Explainer video, where better sleep starts with better understanding.
You know that feeling, right? A terrible night's sleep or one of those mornings where you just feel amazing. But what if the secret to that feeling isn't really about your mattress or what you did the night before? What if it's actually written in your DNA? Well, today we're going to dive into the hidden genetic code that pretty much dictates how, when, and for how long you sleep. Let's get into it.
So think about it for a second. Are you a morning person, someone who just jumps out of bed ready to go? Or are you a total night owl, doing your best work when the rest of the world is asleep? We usually just assume this is a habit, right? But the truth is, it's a lot more complicated than that. The answer might actually be hardwired into your very cells. And today, we're going to figure out how.
Okay, before we go any further, there's one key concept we've got to get our heads around: heritability. It sounds complicated, but it's really just a way of asking, of all the reasons people's sleep is different, how much of that is because of their genes? So, you know how your friend can thrive on 6 hours while you're a zombie without 9? Heritability helps us figure out how much of that is their DNA versus, say, their lifestyle. Now, it's not saying you're doomed by your genes, but it's a huge, huge piece of the puzzle.
All right, so let's just cut to the chase and tackle the big question head-on. Is our sleep actually genetic? Well, the science is pretty clear on this one. The answer is a big, resounding yes. From the time you naturally wake up to your risk for certain sleep disorders, study after study shows this powerful genetic influence at play.
And look, it goes way beyond just being a morning person or a night owl. Twin studies, which are kind of the gold standard for this stuff, have shown that our DNA affects a whole range of things. Exactly how long we sleep, how well we bounce back from pulling an all-nighter, and even our chances of developing major disorders like insomnia, sleep apnea, and restless leg syndrome. Our genes are basically the roadmap for our sleep.
Okay, so knowing sleep is genetic is one thing, but actually finding the specific genes responsible, that's a whole different ballgame. It's kind of like a detective story, really. And over the years, scientists have built this incredible toolkit to hunt for clues inside our DNA, trying to zero in on the specific culprits that are shaping our sleep.
The hunt started out pretty broad. Family and twin studies just proved that, yep, these things definitely run in families. Then, something called linkage analysis helped narrow the search down to, let's say, a specific neighborhood on a chromosome. For a while after that, scientists basically had to make educated guesses about which specific house in that neighborhood was the right one. But then, bam, everything changed with Genome-Wide Association Studies, or GWAS. This was like trading in a magnifying glass for a high-res satellite map of the entire planet, letting them scan the whole genome at once. So, what are these new tools actually looking for? Well, it's basically two different kinds of genetic clues. First, you have common variants. Think of these as tiny, super common typos in our DNA. By itself, one typo doesn't do much, but when a bunch of them add up, they can have a real effect. Then, on the other hand, you have rare variants. These are the big game changers. They're much less common, obviously, but a single one can have a massive, powerful effect all on its own. And finding them requires a totally different kind of search.
So, the big question is, did it work? Has all this genetic detective work actually paid off? Oh, you bet it has. Let's dive into a few of the biggest success stories where scientists totally cracked the code on some really tough sleep disorders.
Let's start with narcolepsy. This is that really debilitating disorder where people suffer from sudden, overwhelming sleepiness during the day. For decades, its cause was a total mystery. And then, genetic studies started pointing the investigation toward a culprit that honestly no one saw coming: the body's own immune system.
And the breakthrough was incredible. It came down to a single gene variant in the immune system. Just look at these numbers. They're staggering. In some countries, more than 98% of people with narcolepsy have this gene. And to understand that odds ratio column, just look at Spain. Having this one variant makes you over 700 times more likely to have narcolepsy. That is not a typo. 700. I mean, that is one of the strongest genetic links ever found for any complex disease. Period.
But here's the thing. It wasn't just that one gene. Researchers did something really clever next. They decided to only study people who already had that first high-risk gene. And by doing that, they were able to spot a second, much fainter signal, another variant in a gene related to our immune system's T cells. Finding a second immune gene, that was the smoking gun. It confirmed it. Narcolepsy is an autoimmune disorder where the body mistakenly attacks the brain cells that keep us awake.
All right, another huge success story is restless leg syndrome, or RLS. For years, this was one of those conditions that people, even some doctors, just dismissed as being all in your head.
But genetics came along and provided the cold, hard proof that no, this is an absolutely real biological condition.
So using clues from those early studies, the big GWAS studies finally hit the jackpot. They identified several key genes with really strong links to RLS. We're talking about genes involved in how our limbs develop and others that seem to be tied directly to that uncontrollable urge to move. These discoveries were just monumental. They finally validated the condition for millions of people and gave scientists brand new biological pathways to look into for potential treatments. But, not every genetic mystery has been solved this cleanly. For every big success story, there are some disorders that have been much, much tougher nuts to crack. And a perfect example of that is obstructive sleep apnea.
So why has sleep apnea been so hard to figure out, genetically speaking? Well, it's because it's not just one single problem. It's a super complex condition with a ton of different ways you can end up with it. Your risk is influenced by the genetics of obesity, the heritable shape of your jaw and skull, the size of your tonsils and soft palate, and even how well your brain controls the muscles in your airway. It's not one puzzle, it's like 5 different puzzles all mashed together. And all that complexity created another huge problem. Because so many different genes are probably involved, each with just a tiny little effect, the early studies were simply too small. They were what scientists call massively underpowered. That just means they didn't have nearly enough people in them to have a chance of detecting those super subtle genetic signals they were looking for. And the scale of this problem was just immense. I mean, look at this. To find a typical common variant, one with just a small effect, maybe an odds ratio of 1.2, scientists realized their studies needed to be 10, or in some cases, 100 times larger than what they were doing. It was like they were fishing for minnows with a net that had holes big enough for a whale to swim through. They had to completely rethink their scale.
So, this challenge of finding lots of small signals has really pushed researchers to the next frontier. They started to think, okay, maybe we're looking for the wrong thing. So now, they're shifting their focus to a different kind of target, those rare genetic variants that can have huge, powerful effects. The strategy here is pretty brilliant, actually. It's to study the extremes. Instead of looking at thousands of people with average sleep, scientists started seeking out individuals with really, really unusual sleep patterns, like, say, entire families of people who are natural short sleepers and feel perfectly fine on just a few hours a night. And this approach led to an absolutely stunning discovery. By sequencing the genes of a mother and daughter who both naturally slept only about 6 hours a night, researchers found it, a single rare mutation in a gene called DEC2. Get this. This one tiny change in their DNA reduces their sleep need by a full 2 hours every night, with no negative side effects. One little typo, 2 extra hours in your day, it's incredible.
But how could they be so sure that this one gene was the cause? Well, the proof came from the lab. Scientists took that mutated human gene and they put it into mice and fruit flies, and the result was just astonishing. The animals with the human mutation also became short sleepers. That right there is the slam dunk evidence. It proved, beyond a doubt, that this single gene is a master regulator of how long we sleep. So where do we go from here? Well, the toolkit is just getting more and more powerful. We're moving from just spot-checking our DNA to whole genome sequencing, which lets us read the entire book from cover to cover. Scientists are also looking for bigger changes, like entire paragraphs of DNA that get copied or deleted. And then there's epigenetics, this fascinating idea that our life experiences can actually leave marks on our DNA, switching genes on or off. The story of sleep genetics is really just getting started. All of this research really points toward a fascinating future, doesn't it? Are we heading towards truly personalized sleep medicine? A world where a simple DNA test could tell you your perfect bedtime, your ideal sleep duration, and maybe even the best way to treat any sleep issues you have? The science is still unfolding, but one thing is becoming crystal clear. The real blueprint for a perfect night's rest is hidden inside our own cells, and we're just now learning how to read it.
Thank you for watching the Sleep to Dream Analytics Explainer video. We hope you sleep well and dream easy.